able to use. This picture depicts that, and we to have data ready to be called as a FE boss. Next slide. Then the last slide on the right side, there is a vision. You have a mode boy. Today we are transferring the data from the fishing vessel to the boy. Tomorrow this boy system could be used to transfer the data to the fishermen because they don't have the satellite facility. But this could be system could be used for two-way communication. We call fish to boat, boat fact to fish. This is just to show you how in future the ocean or the Earth system approach should be used. The World Meteorological Organization has changed after 70 years to look at the whole Earth system as a single unit. And when you talk about the ocean plays a major role, having 70% of it. I'm part of the team, I'm a member of the Infocom, which is the highest body nominated by the Government of India, wherein we are discussing how ocean and the atmosphere are the Earth's interaction linking to the water as well as a cryo can be bring together. The WMO Congress has recently approved 3 important decisions which will be interest and we will be discussing is, and that's what we want to share it with you. One is on the data policy. There is a need to share the data. Unless the data sets are shared, the predictions or the safeguarding the people in the society will not be improved. Second is on the G-bond. Currently, it is approved for the land. Definitely, we are moving forward, and a small group of the ocean community in the WMO, we are working together to work for the G-bond for the ocean. If that is being approved by the Congress, there are more observatories to be deployed by the various countries. Definitely, there is a need for the industry to work together. Not the single country or the nation will be able to do. This will be a group of industries who need to work and make the system. Currently, there are many volunteers, NGOs working on it, and they are all contributing to the collecting the data. We need your thinking, and the data sets what is available need to be used. We need even the AI system or the advanced computing facility requirement as the days goes together. We know that the satellite observation has got limitation, even though it covers spatially, the penetration on the water is not even 75 centimeter. Next is to do all these things, there is another important requirement of funding facility. That's what SOFT talks about. And these 3 decisions will really pave the way for sustaining or improving the network or the density of the network, where I wish the industry would play a major role. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for the patient listening.
Right. Thank you, Venkat. You know, your example of even still today to understand that basic stratification and how that impacts storm, tracks and intensity. I know we had something very similar, between hurricanes Irene and Sandy on the East Coast of the United States. So it really does bring that home that as advanced as we have gotten, we still have those research questions out there. So I look forward to that discussion. So I'm going to do a quick, hopefully, let's see if I can, I'm going to get back to Emma, who's actually, while we had her going first, I think it's actually better. She's going to be able to wrap us up and lead us into our discussion. So let me quickly get back to the start of her slides. Okay, Emma, let's talk about the global ocean observing. We've had the industry, we've had some industry perspectives, we've had the India example. So bring us home from a global perspective. Over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Zdenka. And I just want to start also by saying I very much appreciate the collaboration with MTS, GOOS, the Global Ocean Observing System, and also being invited to take part in this panel. So I'm lucky being able to go last, that I can pick up on many of the great points made in the previous presentations that are perhaps more connected to industry, but show how this connects to the global ocean observing system, but also point out that we have, as Donna noted, a lot of work ahead, and yourself noted with regard to Venkat's presentation, that ocean observations are vital now to weather. We know they're vital to climate applications. They're also vital to more coastal applications in terms of resources and hazard warnings, etc. And there is a great need from society to up the level of information and the quality of of the information that's delivered through our systems. And this is really the challenge that the Global Ocean Observing System would like to talk about with industry and see how we can work more efficiently together. Next slide, please. So this slide really just shows you a little bit of a segment at a global level. Venkat was showing at a regional level some of the observing system, but it's really, it is a global business. I work for IOC UNESCO, supporting the work of the Global Ocean Observing System as a key infrastructure for delivering climate, weather, hazard warnings, and ocean health. Of course, all the investment is going in nationally and regionally in the various systems, but GOOS does the coordination to help the data flow, to make the individual observations add up into answering global questions, as well as regional and local questions. So there's now 86 countries involved, some 8,000 plus observing platforms in the water across the 12 global ocean observing networks under OCG. And there are another 13 ocean observing networks in the bioeco space. So they're taking essential ocean variables and essential climate variables, and GOOS is really this infrastructure that helps coordinate across the networks and the systems to deliver the data towards the applications and solutions. And so WMO, who Venkat mentioned, is the World Meteorological Organization, is a key partner, a key provider of information services in weather and climate, to which a number of our observations flow. Next slide, please. So we know that the planet, essentially, and across our societies, we're facing the impacts of climate change and population at the coast, etc. And there is a great need for an increased level of ocean observations, but we need to do this efficiently, and we need to do this in partnership. Back in 2019, GOOS created the Global Ocean Observing System Strategy, and this is really where we're working towards for 2030 to really make a significant uptick in the number of observations and the information available to meet these pressing societal needs, including, and we will need this, a significant increase in the partnership with the private sector. So when we saw many examples across the various presentations today, work with the commercial sector is involved in many different parts of ocean observing, in the instrumentation, but also in information delivery and also in services. And so it's across the range of, I guess you call it, the value chain, where you take the observations right the way through to how they get delivered as information to those who need them. That we need to sort of increase our collaboration and work with industry. Next slide, please. So this is an illustration taken from the new Ocean Enterprise Study done under IUS with NOAA in the US, looking at the blue economy and the new blue economy in the US, but I'm taking it out to illustrate this sort of value chain, saying that industry provides technology, and that for the ocean observing system, and this is an important cross connection. Also, we see increasing numbers of networks, commercial networks coming in, providing data solutions to users who need that data. We also have various intermediaries in terms of modeling and various groups that will be transforming that information. The ocean data into information that can be used by the end users. And of course, industry are also end users. Gas and oil, wind farms, aquaculture, various action within industry. We get reporting that we would like to overcome in order to increase the participation of industry in the ocean observing systems. So in the past, the research-focused investment has led to quite a fragmented picture. And this is part of what GOOS works in terms of coordination, but it does not help interaction on a larger scale with industry. And I think that Pierre was alluding to quite a number of those issues. The communications across between perhaps the global ocean observing system needs and how these futures look is difficult to access from the outside. So industry, it doesn't have a kind of a core place for information and data that's being collected. So to reiterate this big ask of society, we need an active and vibrant dialogue between industry, academia, and government. And we want to try and engender that dialogue through some work that's going to be coming up this year. So next slide, please. And this is really what we'd like your feedback on. So we are developing between GOOS and MTS a series of dialogues with industry around 4 key topic areas. And these are essentially around trying to mature the market, to lower the barriers, to increase the opportunities for industry to participate. So we're going to look at the supply and development of instruments and sensors, how we would integrate new technologies and business models, ocean information and service delivery, and new technology for the next decade, for the ocean decade. So across that, you'll see that's crossing this sort of value chain. And this is work that GOOS and MTS will work to adopt the outcomes of this. The aim is to have a series of dialogues and recommendations, and then we will work on utilizing these within the system. So next slide, please. So the challenge today is that we have an initial session coming up in May, and they will continue throughout the rest of this year and early into next year. They will be online, and so I would encourage you to look at registering through the GOOS and MTS websites when those information come up. But today we would like input on the key questions across all these areas. What are the big barriers to industry involvement? What do you experience in working with the Global Ocean Observing System across all of these areas? And so with that, I'll throw it back to the panel chair and hopefully be hearing from the audience. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emma. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing at this point. I think, Emma, that was a really great kind of wrap up, and it leads us really nicely into our discussion. So let me stop sharing here and come back as just all of us for a discussion. So those of you who are in the hall, Venkat can help us if there are questions from our audience. We can use the Q&A part of Zoom if you're on Zoom. I think there's folks on YouTube. We might have some folks monitoring that. And so we'll orchestrate this as we can. We have about 20 minutes for discussion, and then we're going to end up with a very nice small award ceremony. So I'm going to pick up where Emma left off. We all have talked about the need and the willingness to have this conversation between our national observing systems and the scientists and industry, but there certainly are challenges. So Emma started the conversation with challenges, and so I'm going to go around and call on our panelists to think about from their perspective, what are some of those challenges? How can we move beyond just a simple conversation to get that interaction? And how can government facilitate that infrastructure? So Pierre, I'll start with you, and some of those challenges to overcome that would allow this dialogue to kind of move forward. So Pierre, if you'll start there, and then I'll come to you, Donna, and then to George, and then to Venkat. Go ahead, Pierre.
I think, as I already said, the main challenge that we need is we need to understand what are the unifying elements, right? So we need to understand what brings us all together. And so we need a common goal. And we could link that to the Decade Initiative, actually. So Decade of Ocean Sciences for Sustainable Development, 10-year period, much longer than the policy periods that we have, much longer than the common funding periods that we have. So that could be a good framework in which we also embed this discussion session right now, right? So I think we need to unify ourselves and understand what is the aim of our collaboration. And as I said during the last slide of my presentation, I think we would all benefit from a more mature ocean observing environment. So if we do not have to turn around every coin 3 times, if we have the majority of the people understand what the true value of high quality weather forecasts is, if the people understand and value that a large amount of all the goods, all the furniture, all the tools you are using, your electronics, etc., has traveled and was transported with vessels, then if we go in this direction, a lot has changed. And besides the scientifics, the science side, the academia side, and besides the industry, etc., I think also this ocean literacy element is very crucial. So the education in this respect to generate more awareness for the aquatic environment and emphasizing what role it plays in the global circular processes is very, very important in order to get there. So it's a comprehensive change that we are actually aiming at, with a result of working in a different environment. All of the initiatives are there. We talk about best practices, we talk about data sharing, we talk about the FAIR principles. So I think we got the right momentum everywhere, but it's just that we need to get a different background on our stage, right? If you understand what I mean. I think we all got the right thinking, we got the right ambitions, we got the right communication, motivation, and everything is just great. We just need to all agree that we need to change the background in which we are working and align on the ambitions of lifting this to a more mature level.
Right, and Don, I want to throw it to you next, but because you've worked in that kind of dual industry ocean science, nexus. So can you talk to us? You talked very nicely about the opportunities. What are some of the challenges as a company that you're working with those national agencies that have the acronym and the bureaucracy? How do you overcome some of that?
Yeah, thank you, Stenga. And I do agree with a lot of what Pierre had mentioned. I think as far as challenges go, though, the 2 biggest ones for an industry, especially a corporation as large as L3 Harris and some of the bigger players, is the financial, who is going to pay for what, and of course the proprietary data. When you're working even with oil and gas, a lot of their data is proprietary, so sharing that data can be a lot of challenges. That's why, as I mentioned, I think it's good to try to find the dual use applications where industry and science can both benefit from the infrastructure, which is so expensive to put in the larger systems, and benefit from the data. And there's a lot of data processing. I think that's where the small startups and can come in, because they've got a lot of the good new ideas, but they don't have the financial backing to sometimes get involved in these larger developments. But from the innovation and data management, which is key perspectives, they can come in and bring some novelty. So I think that's the joint use is important.
Great. And George, you have been certainly in that commercial world, and you're working with governments. How can government encourage the private sector in working together better? And what's, from your perspective, how can government be a bit more helpful?
Yeah, I think the government is helpful. In India, actually, most of our clients are government research organizations. And I think we have to change this, as I think Donna said, and Emma also said, that it's time that some of the private companies who could use this information moves a little forward. As far as I can see, in India at least, the private companies like oil and gas industry and aquaculture, they look at using ocean information as a matter of compliance, not as a matter of that it will be something of value to them. I think that is one important thing to change the mindset of the potential clients as to the usefulness of such information, say in aquaculture, or if they're in the oil and gas business, or the nascent wind farm industry now. I think they have to understand that it is of some value for them. Secondly, I think the government should, at least in India, a lot of the companies involved in such activities belong to the so-called MSME sector, that is the medium and small scale industries. And for them, finance is a major thing, because some of the equipment that you buy to put together a system is fairly expensive, and funding is very important. But we see signs of improvement, especially in the Indian Research Institute's tendering system. In the last few years, we've seen that there's a new concept of tendering where they ask for QCBS, which means quality and cost-based selection, which means that the emphasis is not anymore on the lowest price bid, but it is a combination of quality that you can provide along with the price. This is really encouraging for us, because it enables genuine companies to participate more in Indian government tenders. So I think we are on the path, but as I said, many people in India do not know about this ocean industry, as it were. And I think more people should know about it, and the important role companies like us and the research institutes play in India.
Great, thank you, George. And before I go to Venkat, two things that you mentioned. One is, how do we change those acquisition mechanisms? I harken back to the United States, and if an industry wants to do business with the US government, they have to understand the acquisition mechanisms for each individual agency, national agency they want to work with, because it's different. And so, but I think that realization and what India has done is, what are those other types of acquisition tools, procurement tools that we can put in place to streamline? I think that's a real important conversation. And your second conversation, one of the resources I talked about and the graphic that Emma talked about, it comes from the Ocean Enterprise Study that happens to be the US study. And same thing, the way the industry is categorized, that marine enterprise or that ocean enterprise is hidden in the commerce statistics. So the United States study was modeled after an effort that the UK did under Ralph Rayner. And then what has followed is a Canadian study. And what we're trying to do is that those studies ask the same types of questions so we can compare from, one nation to another, so we can get an idea on this global enterprise. So it might be something that we take a look at on how we at least could articulate the methodology that other countries could follow, because George, you're correct. People do not understand that both from a technical perspective, a jobs perspective, and an economic perspective, how this marine sector is a positive and force multiplier in the world's economies. So Venkat, let me turn it to you. You're a national agency. How do you work, and your ocean observing there in India, how do you work with the national agencies that are all the data is free and open, and then we have the commercial aspect coming in? that there does need to be a profit. There is some difference on how that data might be treated. Have you all had those discussions, or what are some of the challenges that you see, from a national perspective in working that integration?
Thank you, Sanu. And George has really opened up and he has really given a flavor of what this Indian government system is working. We are fortunate to have a single ministry called Ministry of Earth Sciences, where atmosphere and ocean are coming together. We always say in the case study, even WMO published it, we not only provide a cyclone, along with that we come with a storm surge. Similar such things in the GRA, we are trying to work with the Caribbean islands, where they want to provide indentation as well as the hurricane data. So why I'm emphasizing is that there is a societal need. How the government agencies come together, and the policymakers or somebody has to take a decision. He's not bothered about who is giving, what is his mandate. He bothers about the final outcome, what that need to be implemented at the site. So here comes what he says in acquisition. Even though we acquire the data, the deliverable or the final product, it has to go to the same model, it has to go to the agency where they work together. And how much time you have? You have very limited time to safeguard the people. So here comes the interest of making the countries together, and that's what the WMO's the Earth System approach with the GOOS, they are working together and fine-tune this and globally and bringing out a good model. So you really brought out about the data. Here comes again in India's example. We have a single one-stop shop, we call it INCOIS, an agency where all the data sets come together. We don't provide the data to any other agency. If you want, our data is shared with them. And there's a common policy that we provide free data to students and academia. If the industry at nominal cost, it's not per se how much we spent on collecting the data is equated to that. There is no arithmetic to that. However, we have done a statistical study, rightly what you did in US and as well as in Canada, we have done a different way. For example, we provide the potential fishery zone where the fishermen get the data. How much is it beneficial to them? Where the fish catch is changed and they're also reducing the diesel or the fuel, what they use it. Here comes $1 billion savings. That calculation from the statistician come to that. This is really an eye-opener. As you rightly said, we as a scientist are sometimes a user of the data. We don't know the value of that. The value is something more, which is, as you rightly said, hidden. It comes when you talk about pollution, when you talk about, for example, a coral reef damages, you want to put a value to that because you have to pay to the industry or the shipping industry to pay. There comes the issue. So here it's all, as you write, you have done a wonderful job. I've seen your report and Raf has done a very good work. This is a beginning, but myself and Emma, we discussed in the GOOS, there's always a complication to put a value to that. But you recently look at it, what WMO has done, the value towards storms, value towards prediction about storm surge, they brought a value. That is really great. This is what will urge the people. Coming back to that, as you rightly said, there are people who are not having the value, and there are regions where it is a must, it is not reached. The finest example is SIDS, small island developed states. You have many of them, close to that about 25, largest one, not even 6 of them having the observation. That's what we pointed out in one of the paper. Why? Because one is a finance part of it, you rightly talked about that. Another one, they don't have the technique or technology or where to go there. Here comes the interaction with the industry. Industry take forward for the requirement, how do you fulfill? They have to show the way how to do it. That national agency cannot do it. There is a linkage which is happening, as Mr. George rightly pointed out. The knowledge what these government agencies have got, that has to be marketed. The marketing here comes with the societal need. So there has to be a blend to that. When these things work together, industry is also benefited, as well as the society is also benefited. They are deprived of these important data collection. And as a whole, when you talk about 2100 climate change, these data sets are a must, and this has to be evolved in due course with the support of industry. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, the understanding of value, particularly when the information, at least from the national agencies, is available at no cost, is a very important conversation. So Emma, I'm not ignoring you, but I do want to see if we have, you set up those challenges well. It's amazing how quickly this hour and a half does go, and we have a short presentation towards the end. I don't have any questions in the Q&A, and I don't see anything in the chat. But Venkat, do you have question in the room or from Zoom?
Switched on.
It's on. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yep. Yes.
Yes. So thank you very much, Venkat. I've read this presentation and lots of interesting points, and I'm trying to synthesize it all. But early on, I saw this about immature markets, and I maybe think about, coming from an industry perspective, the buy versus build this question. And there's maybe perception sometimes that in science and research, the tendency towards build your own, as in, make your own, whether it's sensors or instrumentation or observatories or whatever. But that also probably applies to data and other things as well. But then I suppose from a policy perspective, maybe there's a inclination, like see limitations the other way, that if you just buy it, you don't develop the capacity and the expertise. So I was wondering if the panelists want to talk a little bit about the buy versus build trade-off.
Okay, so the first part of it, Chris, was just a little bit garbled on the mic. So let's make sure that, So
I just wanted to see what your panelists had to say on the buy versus build discussion, because coming from an industry perspective, there's a perception that science and research tends to want to build their own, as in ignore industry and just duplicate effort and build your own sensor or observatory or whatever. And this sort of might also apply even to data and observations. But then I think you got the second part about the not building capacity, right?
Got it. Okay, great. And so Emma, you come from kind of both worlds. How about if you start us off on this from a GOOS perspective, and then I'll ask our other panelists who will want to jump in on this. Emma.
So I probably don't have a silver bullet type answer. As Zdenka mentioned, this is oceanography is my second career in ocean observing. I started out in the IT industry, in sales and marketing in the IT industry. And so I kind of have an industry perspective and a perspective from working in science. When I'm approaching these industry dialogues and the needs of, expanding the global ocean observing system, I look at it with a broad perspective, and I'm seeing that, it can't just be the responsibility of research funding. This is never going to get us to where society needs us to be. We need many different actors. I think a lot of significant innovation comes from industry, and it can often move faster in terms of mobilizing and creating services and new technology. So I can see the benefits of both sides, whereas on the science side there is sort of significant expertise, and there's a vision for the future that perhaps goes sometimes beyond where industry is. So how do we find a symbiotic relationship? And I guess this is at least in part what the industry dialogues are hoping to do, is to have the conversations which panelists have been talking about today, about where these lie in terms of build versus purchase, I guess. I do think that if we look at it as a global ocean observing system market, and we look at increasing the flow of information, but the right sort of information, and we need to identify what that is, we can mature the market, and so that the playing field for competition for services and these areas is perhaps more open, and there is also a greater capacity for people to take advantage of that, because instead of it being one small contract, it in fact is a contract that would be for observations that could take on a global perspective. But it's very difficult to see this sort of thing within the observing system as it is today, because it's really quite fragmented. So I'm keen on looking at increasing the flow of information. This is one of the points, and also the kind of points that George brought up around best practice in procurement, and what does that look like globally, and can we learn from that, so that we increase I guess the level of a level playing field for these goods and services, so that the best option wins, not one or the other. Does that make sense?
Great. Thank you, Emma. I'm going to open it up very quickly to the other panelists. You all have about, 45 seconds to either respond to Chris's question or provide kind of a summary, because I do need to do this final presentation of some really important certificates. So Pierre, you're next.
We have one or two questions, maybe one question we can adjust.
Yes, sir.
Can you have one question?
Yes, sir. Actually, this in the GOOS, in the Global Ocean Observation Systems, regarding the cabled observatory or the seabed systems, do you think the collaboration between industry, academia, and government institutions, like how essential is this? Can you just put some lights on it? If all the stakeholders join hands together, how it moves off?
So I think if we understand the question is, how is the global observing system making this intersection happen? Is that the question?
Exactly. How all the three stakeholders can contribute to the GOOS.
Okay. I think all of our presenters are part of GOOS. So we'll do that as the wrap up by all the presenters, and Emma, I'll have you go last. So Pierre, if you can, talk about, the buy, build, and that integration to GOOS, and we'll go around and kind of that final wrap up here. It's a great way to end the question. So Pierre, then Donna, then George, and then Venkat, and Emma, you all have the last word. Go ahead, Pierre.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think these two questions that we just had from the audience really nicely highlight that there is need to discussion with a very targeted approach and achieving good discussions, because we sometimes during big shows have meetings like this, but we need to have that in a continuous fashion. And I cannot give a concrete answer to both of the questions directly. However, I want to throw in some other buzzwords which really resonate with what they have just said and which really show that we need to discuss that more. And this is this edge from how long is something scientific and by when does it become operational? Right. So as soon as things are operational and just eat up scientific resources, why not outsource this and give that to a company to do this in a industrial fashion with competition on lowering the price, etc. Then science has more time to develop procedures, talk about which parameters to measure, how to measure it, at what quality, etc. And then there is a lot of room for innovation, and the innovation can nicely come from science as well as from the SMEs, as we have just heard. The big companies can do this industrialization step, but the small companies are needed for new approaches, for innovation, for bringing in new ideas, etc. So there is enough of the cake for everyone. We just need to make sure that we split that properly. And yeah, I think this is the main message.
Great. Donna.
Yeah, I do agree. More awareness is needed. Organizations like MTS and GOOS with these panel sessions, Consortium of Ocean Leadership, even the National Test Ban Treaty have provided data out there. But it's going to take industry and academia and government to work together. One thing we noticed in University of Washington with the RSN, John Delaney had the idea way back, 20, 30 years ago now, but it took time and took funding, of course, but the time it took and it involved industry. Industry was needed for the big infrastructure. I think the things that we're going to see in the future, like charging stations, all the new technology, that is going to bring together the cable observatories and the mobile observatories. That's a lot of that innovation is going to come from either transition from the DoD to the science, or from smaller companies that are innovating. And innovation is key, and they can do the innovation and bring that technology in. So that's what I'm thinking.
Right. Thank you,
George.
George.
More to go. Mm-hmm.
George, your final perspectives.
Yeah. I was just thinking, as Donna just said, awareness is the key. In a country like India, there's tremendous competition for funding. I mean, so in a democracy like ours, it's sometimes a challenge for the government to justify spending a lot of money on ocean science. But as Donna said, awareness is the key, because it is at the end of the day saving lives by investing more in such technology. And that's all I wanted to say today.
Thank you. Venkat and then Emma.
I will make it simple. There was a need, and there is a need, and the need was hidden. Now it is opened up, and there is an urgency, having UNDGATE and many other aspects. How to do it? The mechanism to be evolved. The mechanism can come from the industry. That's what we have to work together and make this to happen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Emma?
Thank you, Zdenka. So one of the messages that I will take away is the importance of this communication, which, you know, GOOS hears from other areas, but also in relation to communicating on the role that industry takes and the blue economy. So not just ocean observing, but I think we need to talk about the blue economy as a whole, and industry's role in that. In answer to the question, I think there's a lot of expertise in science that is needed, a lot of deep expertise and knowledge, and that symbiotic relationship between industry and science and government is going to be needed for quite a long time to come in order to meet the challenges of society. And I think that hopefully the industry dialogues will come up with some practical steps that GOOS and governments can take, as well as industry, to making the most of those relationships. And I think it's, the needs of society is there. We have an opportunity to, I guess, grow the market together to meet society's needs. But as it exists, I don't see society being able to afford or wanting to afford the information it needs. So I really see, this is about cost efficiencies and ability to do more, but at the same time, kind of growing the market through greater efficiency. I'm sorry, it sounds a bit business-like, but that's my business background speaking. I see, an opportunity for growth here based on changing some of the functionality within the system we have today.
Great, thank you. It is interesting. Two final thoughts, and then I'm going to share my slide here, and we'll do a very quick presentation. First, the whole concept of industry putting in commercial observing networks is one that in one regard is relatively new. I know that when I was in IUS, everybody talked, oh, we've got the weather enterprise and we've got all these commercial companies that are doing weather observing. And when I first started this, 2005, 2006, industry was like, that ocean's a harsh environment. I don't know that I want to be putting in all those sensors and going to data as a service. So that has changed. I think, certainly the governments and the national agencies' attitudes are changing, perhaps a bit slower. And so that's where, this conversation coming forward, understanding what those challenges and opportunities are. So let me thank each of the panelists here for the amazing presentations. We had a chance to hit on all of these real topics at that high level. And then what we're trying to do in this, these dialogues is, as Pierre said, and Emma, we got to get past just that conversation into some practical applications. So let me share my screen. I know we didn't have time to do all the questions, but I do want to be mindful of time. So I'm going to share my screen here. Again, share. We, the ocean community, lost a pillar last year, and we have now put together the MTS NANDA Student Innovation Awards for 2022. And this is a contribution by MTS, and you can see all of the sponsors. So it's my pleasure to orchestrate and the awarding of the first two awards for this very, very special award. And as you can see, as you know, Venkat leading this, a very rigorous and competitive selection process to the two award winners. Sorry, the three award winners here that I have here. So Venkat, you're going to have to help me because I'm kind of doing this remotely. I think it would be better if you actually, I'm going to turn the mic over to you so you can actually make the certification, but from, you know, the heart of MTS, our entire board and our entire society, you know, we want to say congratulations. So Venkat, let me actually send it to you to award the certificates.
Thank you, Sankar. Thanks to MTS, thanks to the board and the council for the approval of such an important activity which you took. We really remember my good friend, and we both started this MTS Society in India section. His contribution is immense, and the whole MTS community agrees and approves. And thanks to MTS for giving him an award last year in US in Oceans. Now we have with us his wife, and Mrs. Nisha has come. Thanks to her, and their family also provided funding support. Please come. And I would like to thank all the sponsors, and they have come forward and provided this funding support, which will be kept in the fixed deposit, and that will be helping us from the interest earned to provide to the students. And I request Mrs. Nandakumar to say a few words. You can speak. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I thank MTS India chapter for inviting me and participating in this event's big event for me because it involves my husband, and it's a great pride for me to give this award to the winners. I firstly and most importantly would like to thank Mr. Venkatesan for his initiative and proposing this MTS Nanda Innovation Award. And for making this happen. So thank you, Mr. Venkatesan. My sincere thanks to Marine Technology Headquarters USA for their sponsorship contribution towards MTS Nanda Award. My late husband, Mr. Nandakumar, was recognized for his dedication and passion for his work. And the few who are here who knew him also knew that MTS was very dear to him. Many have modest dreams, while he had a grand future. He imagined a grand future for MTS. I would take this opportunity to encourage more students to participate in Marine Technology Society, to join more students to join the society and to contribute to the scientific community. Finally, and I would like to conclude by extending my best wishes to MTS India chapter. Thank you.
I request you to remain here to give the award. And we also thank our sponsors, Sonadyne International from UK, Inmarsat from UK, and Aries from Chennai, and the Electronic Lab, their family, and Marine Technology Society headquarters, and a well-wisher. They all have supported this. And thanks to the jury committee, we have been very frank and open in the selection process. We have gone all over India, and thanks to Amanda and Monica, they have advertised it widely. And we received many applications. From that we scrutinized. We have both undergrad and postgrad, because Nanda has been always talking that we should build these students and make them to have an innovation. That's why this idea stuck to us. Thanks to Mr. Arulmurthy, my colleague, who took the effort to evaluating and interacting with the students, and they took a long time and evaluating and finally concluding the winners. The third prize goes to Ms. Shreya. She's from Sairam College of Engineering. I think she is not from Chennai. She has come from Bangalore. I am sure that she must be watching this, and virtually I request her to give this award, and maybe just show it to that. Maybe she will be watching, and
Congratulations to Shreya.
we'll be sending the certificate and other moment to her. The second prize goes to Akash from Sri SRM Institute of Science and Technology. Akash, please come over here to receive the certificate. Good luck, Akash. The first prize is a team, Aryan and Yo Bharat. They have done a wonderful job, and the whole committee appreciated. And we have a small, please hold on to that. We have the certificate also. Okay, let's see. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Mrs. Nisha, for coming over here and honoring this occasion. Thanks a lot. And hereby we conclude this very small function here to remember our good friend. I request that to conclude. And as a vote of thanks on behalf of the LOC, I thank all the panelists and all the attendees here and all who are all watching over YouTube and in real. And we thank all of them. It's really an eye-opener for us how we all can interact with the industry and bring out a deliverable to the society. The final goal is it should reach the society. And thanks to all the panelists and other members of this GOOS MTS committee who could not be with us. And we will continue. I'm sure that we'll be led by Janka and Emma to proceed in the right direction to have a conclusion. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you all, and have a great rest of the conference. And what a congratulations to our winners, and our sincere thoughts and condolences to the family, and you will always be in our hearts. So take care all, and we're going to sign out now. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Thanks, Ankur. Thank you, Mr. George and Pierre. Yeah, Donna and Rema. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Venkat. Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Yeah, thanks a lot. Good. Yeah.